Everybody, are you able to access Tessellator or Tufan? Is that working fine for you? Sure, first check if that is working, please, and then check this URL. How many of you here are able to access this URL? Can you please raise your hand? You are all able to access? Thank you. So this is the server running on my computer that will fetch you information based on the city that you give it. I put London here because I know that in the exercise we are looking for this, okay? And this is the JSON file. We're going to give about 5 more minutes for you to submit the assignment, please. The last assignment, 5 more minutes. Anybody who is having a problem accessing the network, please check with Ramesh sir here. In your file, you are expected to have an input field with ID my city. You are expected to have a button. You are expected to have my div as a div. That is a div that should get updated with the information, please. So make sure you have all those. Meanwhile, let me just get ready for the class, and everybody, in the description of the exercise itself, you will see what all we are expecting. It should have an input field with my city, have a button with ID my button, should be a submit button, div with my div. Let's just check if the IDs. Yeah. Guys, if you are getting only 50, make sure you have CSS, JS, make sure you have the IDs properly. Make sure you got the latest IP and not the IP from last week. I hope you are looking at the output, please. Make sure the output looks correct. What do I mean by that? Let me show you what I mean by that. Okay, everybody, all those who have just come, welcome to the class. We are working on getting last session's exercise working, right? What was last session exercise? It was about fetching data from a third-party service and displaying on screen. The data that we were trying to fetch is weather information about cities. But because we are not connected to the internet and we work in our own LAN, what I did is I brought the data for few cities and I'm running a server on my computer, and that is a URL to that server. So you are supposed to call a fetch on that URL, concatenate that with your city name, please. Unless you put a city name, you will not get it. /, right? I'm giving you an example. This is how it works. So basically, you must have :3000 weather, that is the thing. And then to that, you have to concatenate the city name, okay? And do a fetch on it. When you do a fetch, you will get some response. Check WhatsApp. We have shared the code of how to read the JSON. Please read the JSON and display the information exactly like that at the bottom. Understood? In the my div, you have to change the inner HTML or text content to say current temp is, and then get the temperature of London and put it there. Max temp is whatever you got from the JSON. Min temp is 10.86. Done? Does anybody need me to clarify it a little more? The URL at the top is for you to fetch from. The text at the bottom is for you to display in my div. Unless you display in my div, your exercise will not work. Meaning you will not get 100 on 100 unless you display this information on the screen. How would you display that information? Use a fetch, get the data, on that data, traverse through and see where max temp is, where min temp is, get it and display it on screen. That is all. Now, apart from this, you all know we expect you to add CSS, JS, bootstrap min.css, bootstrap bundle.min.bundle.js, right? We want those two also. So we are looking for a script tag, we are looking for a link tag, we are looking for an input field, a button and a div with this information. On clicking the button, the div with this information should display, not by default, only on click of the button. Okay? So that is that. Once this is done, we are going to move on to a very interesting concept and important interesting concept. Let me check to see how many have submitted. 950. So what we'll do is we'll again keep this exercise open to work at a later date, meaning at the end of the class when we start working on the exercise. This isn't the URL, Varshit. Please check. Let me check on anybody else to see if anybody else has submitted. Same thing. I am connected to Audi. Okay. At any point in time, if you see that this URL is not giving you the weather information, then let me know, please. I could check it from here. See that? Capital L London. One moment. Let me make sure the server is running. Localhost 3000. Hold on 1 minute, everybody. Let me update the URL once. I have my own notes, so it's not this, so 3000. $128. Site can't be reached. Why though? Let me refresh my IP and see. One moment, everybody. It's 169. Why? I'm not connected to internet. Let me just reconnect. IP config. Wonder why it says media disconnected. No internet, but we are in the LAN. So I should be able to connect, get my IP. It's giving me 169 dot, which is not the one. Our IP starts with 10 dot. All right, everyone. Let's leave it there. When the network is up, maybe we can give it a try. Ramesh? I'm connected to KMIT Audi, but when I ping it, when I do an IP config, it's not giving me 10 dot. Why do you think? All right, thank you. All right, guys. So there it is, the same URL, weather.london. Everybody, kindly save it. I'll leave it as is. If you want it, copy it or take a pic and save it. But this is how we are expecting it to be. Remember, I gave London just for you to show. You should not type London as is. You should concatenate the name of the city from the input field and put it here. Input field, whatever input field name you have given or ID you have given, you say document.getElementByID.value, will get the value of in the input field. Concatenate that with this and make a fetch. Okay. Now that is all there is. Let's see if there were any submissions. In any case, we'll move on with the concept for today. Okay, we'll fix it towards the end of the session, or we'll look at it towards the end of the session. I see everybody is getting 50. Let me just check the URL. That isn't working. I think it takes time to load it. Says this cannot be displayed for many. Kindly check the URL. Everyone, please check your URL. Remember, this URL should work on your side also. So ideally, when I click on it, I should see an input field, and there I should type London, and when I submit it, it should give me it should give the information in this format. Current temp is this. Remember the spaces and everything. Max temp is this. Min temp is this. This is what it should say. Okay. And if it says that, you'll get 100 on 100. You got 50 because CSS and JS are there. Now let's move on, please. Everybody will work on the exercise towards the end. Let's go ahead with today's concept. Are we all ready? Can you all close your laptops for a few minutes? Please close your laptops for a few minutes. I'll start working and you'll get to look at it. Now, what we have seen so far is using JavaScript to fetch information, using JavaScript to update DOM, right? DOM manipulation, updating the DOM or getting information from a form, sending the information that you get from the form to a third-party service, fetching information and displaying on screen. That's what we have seen so far, right? But JavaScript, like I said, has seeped down to the server side as well. It is not just the client side where you submit and it does a fetch, right? It is also working on the server side. What do I mean by that? Why did JavaScript become so famous all of a sudden? It was gradual though, but why did JavaScript become so famous and how can we use it? So let's understand that a little bit more. In the last class, we looked at hoisting, we looked at different types of variables and different methods of array, right? Do we all remember the different methods of array? Can some of you name a few? Sorry? Map, reduce, filter, good, find, very good, and some methods that we did not look at and I told you to look at. Sorry? Split. He has different methods. Anybody else has any other methods? Split I told you. Push, pop, slice. I said slice and splice. Please look it at home. Slice does not modify the array, the actual original array. Splice modifies the original array, right? And we had many other functions that we use, that we looked at, many other methods of array that we looked at. Now, let's move on, and we also looked at JavaScript object. How is an JavaScript object different from JavaScript array? In a JavaScript array, you just store continuous values in one place. But when you want to store key value pairs, there's a key and there's a value. Like in your case, you have an ID, and then you have let's say your class name, your section name. All this I want to store. If I store without the keys and just store it like that, it doesn't make sense. So I want to store a key value pair, create object out of it, put them all in an array and things like that, right? So JavaScript object has a key, has multiple keys, and each key has values. Now again, in that object, one key can have an array, okay? And we can also have, let's say I have to store information about 100 students. So I'll have 100 student objects in an array. That is also possible. Now, that JavaScript object is residing in my script tag of my JavaScript or in my JS file. Let's say I want to send it to the server and store. I cannot send it as a JavaScript object. I need to flatten it out, right? To make it very light and send it. So then I use what? How do I send a JavaScript object to a server or to any third party if I have to send something? Or how does the server send information to me? In what format? JSON format. Very good. So it sends in JSON format, JavaScript object notation. How is JavaScript object different from JSON? JavaScript object does not have double quotes for keys, whereas a JSON object has double quotes for keys. That is the easiest or the simplest way to differentiate. There are many other differences as well. Now you must be thinking, the server send me data as a string. How will I know what is the ID and all? Should I do a substring? Look for ID, write our, the typical methods that we write to bring, if you find ID, then bring the character next to that and remove the double quotes. No, we don't have to do substrings and filter through that to get it. You can do what is called as parse, okay? So to send it to the server, you stringify it. To read it from the server and get an object out of that string, you parse. So what class has these two methods? JSON class. You must have already looked at it. So when you say JSON.parse, it takes a string and gives an object. When you say JSON.stringify, it takes an object and gives you a string. That string you can send it to server or the server can send it to you. I repeat, when you parse, it expects you to send a string and the resultant object is a JavaScript object. How do you call that? You say JS object dot ID, JS object dot name, and you'll get it, right? Whereas if you want to send it back to the server, or if the server is sending or you're writing the code on the server side and sending it to the client, you take that JS object and say dot stringify, and it converts that into a string and sends it across. So whenever the data transfer happens, it comes in the form of JSON, and JSON is very widely used because it's very lightweight, right? In olden days, we used to use XML and many other ways of sending data. Now let's quickly look at what I mean by JSON parsing, and then we look at that weather app, that weather.json for quick 1 minute, and then we'll continue. All right, everybody. So like I said, look at it carefully. Let's create a JS object, okay, and let's call it a student object, okay, a student obj. I hope you're all able to see that on the left side, right? Object always has curly brackets. Inside that, I'll say name, I'll say Ram or something, and I'll say year, and I'll say second, right? This is 1, right? Student object 1, and then I can create multiple objects like this, stud. Let me just copy that over. Remember, as you must have noticed by now, I almost never use var. So if you look at any code that has var, please avoid. That is old-fashioned way of writing things, right? Now here, I'll say Rahim and say third, right? So we have 2 objects. Let me just try and see what these 2 objects have real quick, right? Or what these 2 objects are of type, right? So how do you check a type of, remember JavaScript is very loosely typed. So how do we know what type it is? You can always say type of and get the type of that object. You see that? It says object. Now, assume that I want to send this information to a server. So I'll take the inbuilt class or the class that is available for us called JSON, and I'll say stringify, okay? I'm flattening it out and sending it to the server, all right? So now let me just do let JSON obj, right, equals that. This is what we did in the last, and I had a few people tell me that the last part, if I could repeat it, would be really good. So I've started to repeat that, right? I run it, and you'll see it has double quotes here, whereas I never gave quotes. This whole thing also is a string, everybody, right? Understood? Now how do I access any object or values in any object? I'll just take that object and give the key. It's very similar to arrays, guys. In arrays, you put a square bracket and give index. Here you see a dot and give the key name. So it is name or year, it's just a dot, right? That's how objects work in many languages. All the properties can be accessed using dot. This is called as dot notation. You can also use square brackets. I'd like you all to check that out. So you see that there? The name is printed. I have JSON, stringify, and then there is a JSON object. Done? Now, let's assume that now I want to send this to the server. Remember, I have an object, I am sending it to the server, I stringified. So let's say I sent it to the server. Server got back to me with a response, right? Now I want to say, I want to get that response, but then you see this JSON object dot, let me say name, and see what happens, okay? I'm just trying to print dot using the same dot notation. Let's see. What did I get, everybody? Undefined. Why? Because it's stringified already. This is in the string format. I can't access this the way it is. I have flattened it out and sent it. So when I am accessing it back in JavaScript, I need to do what? I need to convert it back into the regular JavaScript objects, JS object from JSON, okay? Let me not call it JSON, just say my JSON, okay? JSON object will make you look like, maybe will make you guys think that it is actually an object. So JS object from JSON. So how do I do that again? JSON dot, what did I say the method was to convert a JSON into a regular JavaScript object? Parse, good. So we do parse, right? and here I pass that, right? Now I do instead of this one, there. You see I got the Rahim back. Everybody, very two important methods, stringify and parse. You stringify when you want to either send it to, whenever you want it to go across internet, either from client to server or server to client, you stringify and send it, right? The data transfer happens in this format. But once you get it, to access the value, whether it is a server that is seeking it or whether it is you that is trying to access the information sent from server, you parse it. When you parse it, you get your object back, and on that you use a dot notation and read it, right? This is very important. So what I'm going to do, I'll just copy paste it here so that I can share it in WhatsApp later, right? Okay, so this is that. Now let me look at the JavaScript file. Let me show you guys the JavaScript file or the JSON file that I have for you, meaning the exercise that you are working on. I told you, right? I have my own JSON file and I have a server that is fetching from this that you are pinging. Look at that. It starts with a curly bracket and it has a key as users and a square bracket like I just told you. Oh, this is not the one, I'm sorry, but you can look at it as a sample JSON. So I have Alice, Bob, I have some email. You see that? This is all the information that I have. This is a sample JSON. As you can see, we have arrays inside arrays. We have objects inside arrays. So this is how the data transfer will happen anytime across internet if they say they are using JSON. It's either an object or an array, array of object or object of arrays. Now let me go back and get the actual JSON that you all are looking at, weather data. The one that I just showed you is general user. You see that? London, key, and the value is what? There, one object, and the weather, it says clear, there. So if you were to access, how would you access? You first get the data, and then on the main, you would call min and max. That is how you would get information. Always do a console.log and check. Check to see what is being returned from the server. Then you navigate around and check what is the temperature, minimum, maximum and all. So you see this here? Max temp, min temp, current temp. These are what you should read from your JSON and display. Where is it? This is the current temperature, ma'am. This is the current temperature, min temperature, max temperature. So you're supposed to traverse using a dot notation, get that and display on screen. Okay? Now, that is it. Now let's move on to the next important concept that I said we will be learning today. Right? Let me create a new folder for today, day 12. Right? Everybody, like I said, JavaScript is a very understanding, simple, text-based language. But it has evolved a lot in the last few years, right? Now, one very big difference between JavaScript and the other very famous language, Java, is the way it's the way the code is compiled and it's the way the code works. What do I mean by that? I'll show you with an example, okay? Now, I need you all to focus and look here. I'll go back to my one compiler, okay? I'm not advertising it, it's easy to show, so, okay? So everybody, we all know how to write function, right? So I write a fun1, right? And I do a console.log and I say fun1, right? This is a regular function, I'm not writing arrow function, regular function. I'll do a console.log and say fun2, done? Now I have one more function in which I am calling these two functions. Fun1, done. Fun2, done. Right? Very simple. And after all these are done, I have to call the function. What will I expect? What do you think will be the solution, please? You can close your laptops, everybody. What do you think is the solution or the output? Fun1 and fun2, because I have a space there, we got a space. Expected behavior, right? How many of you understood what is happening here? Please raise your hands. The last quadrant, everybody understood? This is how it is in any language. You have two functions. In third function, I am calling these two functions. Done? Now, in JavaScript, there is a way to make sure that a function runs with a little lag after 3 seconds or after 10 seconds like that. How do we do that? You can say set timeout. Set timeout takes a callback, one function here, and then the number of seconds that you want it to delay. Okay? Again, I am mimicking something. I will tell you what that is. So, first function, I want it to be called fun1. As you can see, guys, whenever we use callbacks, we don't use parentheses. Please remember, we use parentheses here, but in the callbacks here, we never use parentheses. Okay? So, fun1, and let's say I want a delay of 3 seconds. The second parameter is milliseconds. So, I will put a 3000 there. Everybody understood? In the first one, I showed you fun1, fun2. I called those two in my function, fun function. Now I want to show you, and they worked, as per time, fun1 and fun2. But when I try to call, now I am trying to call fun1, but with a lag of 3 seconds. 3000 milliseconds is 3 seconds. Now what would you think? What would you think will be the output? Fun1 is called a little late. So if you were writing Java code, the same thing in Java, not the same methods, not set timeout, but if you were to write a code in Java such that a function should delay a little bit, in Java, the engine would wait for it for those 3 seconds, and only then it would go to the next one, right? Now, you too might be thinking, after this is done, after this line is done, it goes to the next one, right? Now, let's see if that is what is happening. You see, it's taking a little longer. That is true. But let's see what the output is. What is the output, everybody? What do you see? Did it wait and then print fun1 and then go to fun2? No, it did not wait. So, the JavaScript engine does not wait. Okay? I told it to set a timeout of 3 seconds for fun1. So, it should wait for 3 seconds, work on the fun1, give the output and go to the second one. Instead, it skipped that and went to the second one. So, fun2 is printed and then fun1 is printed, right? If you go to a hotel or restaurant and you are waiting for somebody to come and serve you, the person who's waiting on the table, the server or the bearer or whatever you call, if that person is waiting for you, right, taking your order, processing it and giving it to you, and then once your table is done, that person is going to the next table, taking the order, giving it to the chef, getting the order and giving it to you. Remember, there's only one person waiting in the whole restaurant. Waiting meaning the waiter, the bearer or the server. Only one person. So how long would it take for all of you to get your orders if you were waiting? Quite some time, right? So that is Java for you. Everybody understood? Careful with the laptops there. Shall I? In Java and many other languages, you ask it to delay certain thing. It will wait till that time has elapsed and then it will work on the code. But in JavaScript, it does not. It is a single threaded language. Only one waiter, one server, one bearer, whatever you want to call, one thread. And that takes care of everything. But in putting it in typical Hindi, it is very chanchal. It doesn't wait for you to take the order, give the order and all that. So it wait, do you need 5 more minutes? Fine, I'll go to the next one. You need 5 more minutes, I'll go. The single bearer takes care of all the orders in the restaurant. If that single bearer or server, right, if that single server is smart enough or is coded in a good way, it will look like there are multiple people serving in that restaurant. Understood? If that server knows how to take orders, how to wait upon and how to take orders, let's say there is 3 seconds time, going to the other one, the person can take care of the whole restaurant. Let's say there are 5 or 10 tables. But in case of Java, If you ask it to wait, it's going to wait, and until that time is elapsed, it's not going to go to the next one, right? So this methodology, this whole thing is called asynchronous, right? If you go with time, synchronous in regular English is along with time. If you're going the other way, it is asynchronous. It doesn't wait for you to, for the function to complete and go to the next one. What is the advantage of that? It's very quick. Everybody, JavaScript is very lightweight, it is very quick, and if you use it appropriately, it can do wonders. That is why we have Node.js. You see, Node.js is a library that is created using JavaScript. So using Node.js, you can run a server and it can fetch and give files very fast, right? Whatever orders you give, it can do it very fast because it's very, very light. But let's say we go to a restaurant, that's a very gourmet restaurant, right? So the salad they make at the table, they pour the Caesar salad on or Caesar dressing on the salad in front of you. So what is that? That is process intensive. There's a lot of process going on. So this chanchal or this really quick bearer, it's difficult to do that. Getting my point? Understood? So that means that you cannot use Node.js based or JavaScript based servers for process intensive tasks. But you can use them for tasks that are quick and can be done fast, the data driven ones. You get the data from the server, you work on the data, you display and you do that. All these can be done real fast. Fetching files, giving files, streaming, Netflix streaming, anything. Those things can be done faster. But you have really process intensive algorithm that you have to run. Do not use Node.js or this kind of Node.js for that. Because it will single threaded, it will be stuck at your table. It cannot go to another table. Everybody clear? Why JS? What is asynchronous? What is synchronous? Right? Another word that you all should be familiar. Please make a note of all these words. What is asynchronous? What is single threaded? And I'll also send links for all these. And what is non-blocking? Right? Java on the other hand, see Java is one of my favorite languages. Right? Like I said, it is like it's been there since ever. And it's still there, so that shows. But it is blocking architecture. Means what? You ask it to wait. Let's say I'm talking to a database, getting information from database. It is stuck. Until it gets information from the database, it is stuck. Right? So that is blocking. Whereas JavaScript, it sees it's taking longer, it goes to the next one. That is non-blocking. For database connections and things where you have to wait, it takes a lot of time. So things like this where you want, so that is non-blocking and blocking for you. We know asynchronous, we know single-threaded, one thread keeps checking. So this bearer, right, this server who's serving food, everybody, the chef says, rings a bell or says the food is ready. So that's an event that has happened. So then that bearer or server will go to the chef's table, get it and give it to you. So it is event driven. Okay, event driven, non-blocking means it doesn't wait. Event driven, non-blocking, single-threaded architecture. That is Node.js for you. Done? Whereas the other language, Java, is blocking. Let's not go too much into Java. I'll just go into the whole stuff, but then let's stick to JavaScript, right? So this is JavaScript. So here we have, I just showed you an example. Now, there are other times where, let's say for example, going on with the same restaurant and server, the dosa is ready, and then that server gives you the dosa, but the chutneys are not ready yet. There you don't want, you want the person to wait for them, bring them all together. You see what I'm saying? I'm giving very lame examples, guys, just so you get it right, right? So sometimes you want JavaScript also to follow through some steps, right? That's when the asynchronous programming comes into picture. Let's see that now, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm not going to type up the whole thing. I typed this part up, but if I show you the whole thing typed up, it's going to take a lot of time. I have already typed up code. So the agenda for today is to understand asynchronous programming. Okay, everybody? Asynchronous programming. First thing, what are callbacks? What are promises? When to use, or what are async await? What is this thing? Three things. Callbacks, promises, async await. Three things we'll learn. Then we'll go to Node.js, run a simple server, and that is the exercise. Running a simple server. There's nothing that you have to do. Run a Node.js server using JavaScript code. I'll show it to you. Code is also available on the website. So today's exercise is not going to take long. It's going to take only 1 or 2 minutes max, right? But we have a lot to understand. So stay with me. Please close your laptops and look at the screen. So let me go and open up the code for asynchronous programming. If something doesn't work, we'll troubleshoot and fix it, guys. So don't panic. I know you don't, just saying. So I'm opening up an HTML file. So what are we learning today? Asynchronous programming, which many people get confused a lot, right? So what is asynchronous programming? I'll show you what it is and what are all the methods that are there in that also. I'll show. Okay. Asynchronous programming.html. As you can see, I have a lot of code that is commented out, right? So I'm going to open up each block of code for you and explain, right? Again, I repeat, this is a class this is a session where we explain stuff that is important for your project, but we also explain some main concepts. So please make a note and go ahead and read. I'll also share links, but this is how it is done. I'll go over the stuff, but don't expect it to be completely. I'm not going to spoon feed everything, but you will understand what I'm talking about, right? Hold on 1 second, please. What we do in JavaScript? Everybody focus. Most of the times what we do in JavaScript or any language, or mostly in JavaScript, is we get the data from the server. So we fetch the data, we process the data, and we display the data. 3 things is what we do: fetch, process, and display. So let's see, there is a function here, fetch data, a function for process data, a function to display data, right? So here I'm calling fetch data, storing that information in data. I have process data, which is taking this data, storing it, and at the end I have display. Throughout the rest of the time here, for the next 15 minutes to half an hour, this is what we are going to understand. The same 3 methods written using callbacks, using timeouts, using promises, and at the end using async and await, which we will be using going forward, async await, right? So fetch data, process data, display data, 3 things, right? So let me uncomment. I have uncommented this code. I have a script tag in which I have these 3, and I'm saying display data and displaying the data, right? Let me go back. As you can see, I have that display data. Let me go. Right, saved. Let me go back to my HTML and say go live here. Asynchronous programming example, it's in the script tag. What do I have here, everybody? As you can see, I did a refresh. Remember, just 3: fetch, process, display. So it is saying data fetched, processing data, process data. Now, we are not talking to a third party. I just gave those console.logs so that you know the order. Very simple, right? Now, as you can see, console.log of data. Where is that? This is commented. Hold on. If I open these functions, you see data fetched, and I'm returning here is data. Now, process data, processing data, right? Displaying data, I'm just saying console.log, so displaying. Very straightforward, simple, 3 functions called in an order, right? Now, this is done. Now, let's try to understand the next one. I want them to be in an order. I want the moment you get the dosa, get the chutneys. Once you have the chutneys, put them all on the plate and give it to me. So data fetching should happen first, data processing should happen next, and displaying data should happen third. So I'm making JavaScript work in an order. How do I do that? I do that by using the callback methodology. Can one of you tell me when was the last time we used callbacks? Callback is nothing but function inside another function in the parameter section where you are calling the function. We use during map filter, right? Are you all with me? In map, we said dot map. Inside that we wrote another function, arrow function. So like that, callbacks also, they maintain the order in which you are calling, one inside the other. Let me show you what I mean by that. Look at this please. Okay, I have this script tag, I have commented the earlier one. You see this? The same method, fetch data is there, process data is there, but look carefully. When I am calling, first I am calling fetch data. Inside that, you see, this is your callback. Everybody, all these are interview questions. If you know JavaScript, people expect you to understand what is asynchronous programming, why are callbacks there, why did people move from callbacks to promises, why did people move from promises to async await, what is callback hell, right? There is a word called callback hell. I know it doesn't sound good, or callback pyramid. What is that, right? So just now you saw that they were in three things, right? I showed you how in the earlier example in one compiler, I showed you how they don't maintain an order if something takes time, but we want them to maintain an order, so we write one inside the other, right? Like that in fetch data, I'm calling process data. You see that? This is the parameter. There. In process data, what am I doing? Whatever I'm getting from fetch data, I'm processing it. You see that? And then inside that I'm calling display data. There's a very famous ice cream making example online. You can look it up and see the process, right? Now I have only 3 steps, right? Fetch, process and display. And even for this, I have to write one inside the other. Imagine if I had 10 things that had to happen sequentially, sorry. What would I have to do? Again one more method inside it, again one more method inside it. That is your pyramid that we are talking about. This shape takes a pyramid shape. And debugging it, troubleshooting it becomes very, very difficult. So before ES6, before that, or before the latest version of JavaScript, people used callbacks to make sure that they ran in that order. Okay? So this is called callback. You see, now you must be thinking, how does it work? Fetch data, to this data I am sending this function, you see that? Callback, and I am calling that function. Again, in process data also, I am not just sending the parameter, I am sending the function name and I am calling that function. Not many languages support this, sending the name of the function and calling that function. Actually it's a reference I am sending, but the name here, right? Callback is the name there. You see what I am saying? So this is called callback. And if you do multiples, let's say you have 10 things that have to happen sequentially, then it would be a pyramid, callback pyramid or callback hell. Very difficult to debug, right? So I'm going to do a Control Z and comment that out. Done? Now let me go back and show you the next one. Same callbacks, but let's say there is some timeout that you have set. How does that work and how does that look? Everybody, we are understanding asynchronous programming in JS. What are the things that are used to work with to make sure asynchronous programming works in JavaScript? They all started with callbacks, right? Even this one is like that only. You see, fetch data, process data, display data, right? Now I'm going to save it, go back, refresh. You will see a delay there. You see data fetched, a little delay when compared to the earlier one. You see, I refreshed it. So this is taking a little time. Even though it is taking time, it is waiting. It is not skipping to the next one like earlier. So this is the advantage of using callbacks, one inside the other. Even if it takes time, it will not skip. It will continue the step-by-step way in the order in which you want it. Everybody clear? How many of you are clear about the concept of callbacks? I see a few hands there. To maintain the order, that quadrant please focus. To maintain the order in which you want the sequence of events to occur, we use that. Even if there is a timeout, you see, even though I added a timeout, how do I add a timeout? Like that, put a comma like I did earlier. After the whole function is done, right? You have this whole function. The second parameter is 1 second, the timeout. Now this is callback example. Now let me do a Control Z and comment these out also. So the problem with callbacks, like I said, is if you have multiple 5 or 7 things, you have to write one inside the other. that would create a big problem in troubleshooting and debugging, right? So that's why we moved on, right? Oops, sorry. We moved on to the next concept. Very important, and there are still some folks who use this. Meaning, if you have only one call to make and you want to wait, let's say I'm waiting for the server to give me some information, like a JSON file or a weather information. It's only one call, but I want it to wait and only then display the data. Everybody, if I'm fetching information from a third-party service, and if JavaScript behaves the way it behaves, and if that thing is taking time, right, then it automatically go to the second one. There is no data for displaying the data, right? In your case, in weather data, let's say, there's no data to display. It will say undefined and you'll get a big error. So what should you do? You make sure that you wait till that data is here. How do you do that? That you can do using promises. So instead of callbacks where you write one inside the other, anytime, anywhere, you see a then keyword, THEN, then it is a promise. It sounds similar to if then else, but it is not. A little, but not much. So what are we doing here, everybody? Are the people at the last able to see this part, please? Very important. So this is called chaining of promises. So I'm saying fetch data. You see, I'm not writing one method inside the other, one function inside the other. I said fetch data. Only once you have fetched data, meaning dot then you come inside and do this. Only when this is successful, you say dot then and do the processing. Only when this is successful, you do the displaying data. Clear, everybody? What we have learned earlier are callbacks, where you write one inside the other, which are really problematic to work with. So we have promises. Promises are very simple. You say dot then and then say only when you have gotten this, work on this. Only when you have gotten. So anywhere you see dot then, it is this. Now what if there is a problem? What if there is an error? You have a catch at the end. This whole callbacks, promises, async await can be taught in 4 to 5 classes. We can show you a project and say how if you want to get the order information and data, how it is failing, all that. But we don't have the luxury of that kind of time. So I put it all in one file and trying to explain it to you. I need your complete focus, okay? So when you see then, it means it's a promise. A promise is either rejected, approved or pending. Meaning, if this data it's able to get, then it is, promise has satisfied, so it is done, right? Approved, done. But if there is a problem here, it is rejected. So it will come over to this section. Again, everybody, as you can see, the error handling here and this whole dot then is a little tricky. Okay? A little tricky, not as tricky as callback. So if you have 1 or 2 promises, it's okay. But what if you have 6 or 7 like I told you earlier? Right? It again becomes a little difficult. So what do you do? What do you do then? We go to the next best thing, which is what? Any guesses? Async await, right? So we tell the browser, we tell the JavaScript engine that boss, I am going to take time. This is a gourmet dish or this is going to take some time. So you mention here. Very important. I'm sure many of you are looking for internships and all in a year or so. 3-1 next time you must be looking for internships and all, right? The moment you say JavaScript, the placements officer, whoever the techie, is going to ask you, explain asynchronous programming. How does it work? What do you think it is? Can you explain a few terms that are used in JavaScript? I'd like you all to be able to talk for at least 10 minutes on that concept. Why should we go for asynchronous? What is event driven? What is non-blocking? What is single thread? What are callbacks? When you have callbacks where you can write one function inside the other, why did we go for promises? When you had promises where you could do a dot then and go on, why did you have to go for async await? And how does async await work? Look at this please. In front of this function, I put async or async depending on your accent, right? And wherever I'm fetching the data, I put await. Extremely simple concept. Plain English. Await. When you are fetching data, await. Wait for the data to be fetched. When you are processing data, await. So, one async can have any number of awaits in a function. One async can have any number of awaits. But if you have an async, you must have at least one await. Okay, clear? There is no need for you to put multiple asyncs, but if you have an async, must have an await. If you have an await, you must have an async. It works vice versa, right? So here I have fetch data, process data. If there is an error, you look at that here, please. People who are familiar with CPP or any other language, Java, try catch. Perfect way of handling. So you see, JavaScript is moving more and more towards Java, right? In Java also you have this try and catch blocks. So instead of here, where we had, what did we have? Where we had catch at the end and you wouldn't know where the error occurred. Here we have nice try catch. See that? Try here and catch. Done. And based on the error, you can get read from the error and display and you will know where it occurred, right? Now I'm going to control S this one, meaning save. You see automatically refreshed because I have the server running there. Async await, data fetched, processing data, processed, here is the data. As you can see, I deliberately put some lag here, 1 second lag. But just because I want to replicate how the server will take more time, right? And it still worked fine. So, everyone, that is asynchronous programming for you. Question, he says, when you have an error there, how do you know which part of where the error occurred? When you print the error, it will print the complete stack trace as to where it happened. We'll see when we work on React and other languages where we use JavaScript and async await extensively. There I'll show you how when you see an error, you'll see a stack trace. I'll also share a link with you. Okay, in the group I'll share a link. It gives you, do you all understand stack trace? No? So basically it will tell you during which path. You all know, Hansel and Gretel story? You know, the two brother and sister living with the stepmother. The stepmother tries to take them to the forest. They leave the pebbles and one time bread and one time all that. Nobody's into fairy tales these days. So that is like leaving a trace of where you're coming from. So similarly here also, you can leave the error when you print it out. It gives you a complete trace of where all, how it had happened or from where, which line and how the whole thing traversed. It traces the whole thing and displays. So the try catch is a very good, what should I say, it's a very good way of error handling, right? And you can actually have finally also here. Let's say you're talking to a database and suddenly the connection lost because of some error, but your connection on the database is still open somewhere. Or let's say you opened a connection, I'm sorry. You opened a connection, you're working on something and suddenly due to some error, the code gave an error and it came to catch. Now the connection is still open in the database, right? How do you close that? You need some function that will be called irrespective of whether the code worked or not. That is finally. The name itself says finally. So you close all database connections in finally. So this whole asynchronous programming, all that, I'll share links with you. I'm going to share this code also so you can play around with it and see, right? Now, let me open up.
Good morning, everyone. So, I hope whatever you covered now, everyone is clear with it. Anybody has any questions first? Okay, none. Okay, I have 3 questions here. Number 1, you saw just now the concept of asynchronous programming. Now, generally, there's a callback function you saw. Writing in a hierarchy, right? It's like function inside function. What is the difference between calling a normal function in an order and using callback? What is the difference? No, because JavaScript is a top to bottom approach. Whatever comes at the first line it is guaranteed that it executes. Goes to the next function call. If you're talking about normally when you're calling functions. But what is the difference here? Normally calling functions in order and having a callback function in hierarchy. What is the difference? Wait for the timeout. I don't want to use timeout. In my project, there's no timeout business. Now, still, do you recommend me to use callback? So I want in project not to understand how this works. So if you are maintaining the order in callback functions, why can't I use a normal function and maintain the order 1, 2, 3, 4 with different lines? Simple question here. Anybody? No. Did you understand my question? Yes? Or do you want me to tell the answer or will you explore? How is that? Yeah, please look it up. It's very simple. And actually, I expected you people to counter that problem with me. Okay, second question here is, previously you saw JSON objects, right? You saw JSON object converting into a string, JSON using stringify, then transferring over a network, and then at the other end, he will receive the JSON file, parse it, and then use it as per the need. Correct? Yes? But why, first of all, why do we need to convert into a string? Why can't we convert into a byte? Bytes are zeros and ones, strings are 0 to 256 characters. Most probably, there will be heavy load on the network, correct? While transferring. Why you want it to convert to a string? Why not into a binary format or binary string? Yes, anyone? Binary stream is lightweight, right? It has zeros and ones. Whereas string is a bunch of characters, ASCII characters, which flow through your network cables. Why? Why do you want to make that heavy lifting? Why don't you keep it lightweight? Yes? Anyone? Please make these points because these are the questions which generally are asked and you need to know. If this is clear, you can work on project directly. Shirsha, are you ready?
Yeah, sir. I'm sharing the code for server. I'll explain and share the code, everybody.
Yeah.
Give me 1 minute.
Shirsha, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Thing is, since we have study material, can we share the PPTs and in form of PDFs and study material?
Of course, sir.
Please,
We'll do
I
that.
want every student should have that, and it should be on the same day if you can.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, please, since study material is accessible in this auditorium, please log in, download this material. It will be in a PDF format, not in PPT, because I have seen few people working on Mac and few people on Linux too. So to make document portable, PDF is format. PDF is appropriate. Yeah. What about this? You'll explore? Okay, good. Let's go to the third question. Meanwhile, this is related to what you're going to do. Anyone heard about something called as Node.js? Node.js. Node. How many of you installed in your system? Oh, fantastic. So everyone has done it, mostly. But what is it? Why did you install? What is that software is? What is that Node.js software is? Fantastic. It is a runtime engine. It is not a server. It is not a technology. It is a runtime engine where you are trying to run your code out of your browser. Generally, whatever you saw your code execution is done through browser. I want JavaScript to execute out of the browser. We use Node.js runtime engine. So this is a commonly asked, and most of you make mistake. What is Node.js? Everyone says Node.js is a server. Sorry, it's not server, it is a runtime engine. If you want to check the relevancy with Java, JRE, Java runtime engine is equivalent to Node.js. Okay? So that is one. Yeah, Shishya, are you ready?
Yeah, so let me just share you the code.
Yes.
Everybody, I told you how JavaScript is a lightweight thing and it can be used in many ways and all that. So using JavaScript and with few more libraries, right? How does JavaScript work in a browser? What is the engine that we use, please? What engine is in browser, in Chrome browser? V8 engine, very good. So we use in Chrome browser there is V8 engine which helps the script to run, right? But for us, because JavaScript, you know, with the asynchronous thing, with the whole thing, and there are many other advantages of JavaScript, people wanted JavaScript to be outside the browser, to be available outside. They wanted to create applications, standalone applications, network applications, right, using JavaScript. But for these to compile, you need an engine. But the V8 engine is inside the browser. How do you get it out? Node.js, very good. So Node.js, like Srikanth sir just mentioned, is a JavaScript runtime engine. Remember the phrase, please. JavaScript runtime engine outside the browser. It has a few more libraries. It is a wrapper around the V8 engine. It is outside the browser. So what do we mean by that? What do I mean by that? Earlier, when we initially started JavaScript, I showed how in the browser I would go right click and do an inspect and go to console, right? And here I would type, right? Console.log, alert, whatever I want. So I told you all this is working because this browser has JavaScript engine in it. But if I have a simple, like your .py file, you go and say Python and then you run it, right? So similarly, if I want to do that for JavaScript, what do? I install Node, I go to command prompt, right? I'll say Node and press enter. Everybody to the screen, please. Now you see, now I can have JavaScript working outside also. So now here I'll say console.log or console.log and say, hey, earlier I could do it only from inside the browser. Now I brought JavaScript outside. How did it, JavaScript, execution of JavaScript outside, how did it happen? Because I've installed Node.js in my laptop. So if your computer has Node.js installed, you can create standalone applications, you can create network applications. JavaScript is very good with sockets and all. So like that, people created frameworks also. Monday or the week after next week, we'll go over the PPT and go through the conceptually, we'll understand Node.js, where all it is used and all. Right now, today, it's all dedicated to code. So here I have this, right, console.log. Now if I want to execute right, I'll do a control C, I'm back. I want to execute a file. What will I do? A JS file. Look at this, please. So in this folder here, I'll create a simple hello.js. Okay? And what is it going to do? Console.log. This is a .js file, mind you, everybody. Here, hello from file, JS file. Okay? This is done. I have hello from JS file. Now I'm going to go, remember CMD here in this folder only, wherever you have your JS file. CMD, command prompt, node. See that? I'll do H and press tab. Everybody, if I just type node and press enter, it gives me a prompt where I can write JavaScript code. But usually, whenever you create a file, .js file, you want to execute that file, not copy that code and paste it here. So then, you go, say node and give your JS file name. Go to that folder where you have your JS file and just say node space that file and it executes. Why is it happening? I repeat, because I installed Node.js environment or Node.js in my computer. Now, like I told you, the one server fetching many things, right? So now I want to create a server in my computer. Like you have localhost colon 3000 when you say go live server, I can create a server in my computer. What we'll do today is I'll walk you through the code of how it is done, right? I have already shared the code in study material. You just have to execute that code, get the server running, copy that URL and paste in the exercise. For today, it is just about executing that code that I gave you. Make sure the port is changed, please. The port should be the port that is expected in the exercise. I repeat, I have already shared the server file with you in the study material, but it's running at a different port, right? Change the port to what is expected in your exercise, run it, just paste that URL and it should work, okay? Now, let me explain the server.js real quick. I know that after 1.5 weeks or 1 week, things might seem a little fresh. So, we'll go over this Node.js part a little over again in the next class, a quick recap in the first 15 minutes, 1.5. Let's look at it. Everyone, this is my server.js. You need, in Python, you all know Python, that's why I keep taking example of Python. You import the libraries that are needed, right? So, the first line here is also that. Remember, we are running an HTTP server. So, I need the HTTP module. First line is that, right? Then for every server, everyone, where do ships dock? Ships dock at a port. Each port has a number. Like that in your computer also, there are many ports. HTTP. So, here we have 3001 is what I have given. Exercise expects a different one. So, you say which server, which library? HTTP. You got that? Then the port 3001. Then you see that? Request handler. Meaning if somebody is requesting something, you handle it like that. I'll repeat this again in the beginning of the next class. Next one, the most important one. Look at that. Just one method. Create server. That's all. So, I say HTTP, the module that I just imported, and say create server and pass this request. Done. So, my server is now ready. SCRVER const is ready. Now, I am asking it to listen. Server, please listen at this port. I repeat, how do you create a server using JavaScript, using Node.js or JavaScript? You first get the HTTP module, you set a port and you say listen. As simple as that. 3 important steps, right? So, how do I execute this server.js now? I go to my command prompt. I just installed Node, right? So, I'll go to my command prompt and say node space server.js. You see that? It says what? Hello world, server is listening on port, at port 3001 actually, on port. That's all. So, now you see, how do you know this is working? People say, ma'am, my code is not working. I've seen quite a lot of times when people say that you'll see it still keeps blinking. But that is what the server is supposed to do. It is supposed to listen, wait for your requests. So, blinking is good, okay? So, now how do I know it's running? So, I go, I say localhost 3001. See that there? Server is listening on port 3000. I created my own localhost. From my computer, I created a server. A server is now listening, right? Now, where is this material? Where is this file? I created a txt file and uploaded it to server.js. Okay? You can look at it. Oh, show. Same file, exact thing. No, I'm not going to edit it now. I'll leave it there for you. But this is exact file, except you have to work on the port. Check for the port that your exercise is looking for. Change that. Make sure it is running at localhost. Put your IP in. Paste that and put it in the exercise. You know how to change the IP, right? Look up IP config. You'll get your IP. Replace that with this IP and check. Let me quickly go over and see how many of you have already submitted. I don't think many did, but hoping against hopes. Oh, there. Vignesh, who's Vignesh? Vignesh Rao, Hari Vignesh Rao. Good job, wherever you are. It's very simple. And I see some of you are using somebody else's IP, please. Don't do that. Check your IP by mistake or whichever way. Make sure you have proper IP. It's very simple. Guys, there's only one test case. Get the server running using server.js file that I shared. Make sure the port is matching. Run it and show. See that? 10.10.9.3002 and this. And it should say that. It's a very simple thing. Let's see how many of you will be able to crack it. Vishal Raj also finished it. Good job. Once you get a hang of it, it just takes about 10 seconds. The other exercise from the other day, we'll see what the problem is. Okay, there are a lot of reds. Are you all using localhost or what? 10.10.9.128. I think that is mine, right? That is my IP, guys. If I'm not wrong, please use your IP. 10.10.9.18. It is mine. Why are you putting mine? Is it already there in there? If it's there, then remove it, please. I must have added it just for reference. Please remove and add your IP. That much you should be able to do. Please add your IP. Make sure, again, I'll repeat the process. Day 12 exercise, the server.js file, which has the HTTP module, all that code that I've given you. Make sure you save it as server.js and execute it by saying node space server.js. You will see here, and when you go and say localhost 3001, you will see there as well. Now, once you see this in localhost, just remove this localhost, put your IP, copy that and put it in the exercise. Okay? How many of you want me to explain this again? Please raise your hand. Explain it again. Okay. Let's go. This is my server. I imported a module, stored that in HTTP because I need HTTP module. And on that module, I am calling the create server method. This creates the server. But what does the server require? It needs to be pinging and listening at a port, right? And what should it do when somebody pings it? It should give a response. So this is the response. Response, it takes a request response. Actually, I could have written this as a callback inside this create server itself. I didn't want to confuse you guys. So server.js is my file, exactly like what I have shared in the material. Please take that and go to the folder where this is and say node space server.js. It will say running at 3001, but your exercise expects it to run at 3002. So you need to change the port in server.js. Make sure you are changing the port. You all know where the port is, right? Change the port, submit. Let's see how many have submitted. Unlike last exercise, this exercise is pretty straightforward. Once in a while, we like to give some exercises that are not that easy to work on as well. So I have quite a few. Everybody? This is all. Okay? Very simple. The code is already given. Make sure you save it as a JS file. Change the port. Go to the open command prompt at that folder. Do a CMD to open the command prompt, I mean. Type node space, whatever the file name that you have given, server.js, or if you have given any other name, it should say localhost is running. Go to the browser, type localhost :3000 or 3001, whatever the port. Now change that localhost to your IP, copy that and put it. I'll give you 5 minutes. Let's see, this is Manideep. Manideep, it should say hello world. Everybody, the text should be exactly same, please. Okay, that is how we can test. So make sure you have the exact text that we are asking you to show. Oh, it says server is running on port 3002. This is what it should say, everybody. Let me check. Oh, I'm sorry. Guys, please make sure it says hello world. Okay. The hint will say server is running, listening at port 3002, but make sure your code says hello world, please. Go with the file that I shared. It says hello world, right? Kindly make sure that it says hello world. Where is that again? Sorry, small correction. Make sure it says hello world, not just server is running. I know in the hint image, I say server is running on port 3001. Make sure the hello world part is also there. Yeah, there you go. I think everybody got a star there. Everybody, can I get your complete attention please? So in the exercise that you have seen, it says server is running, in the exercise that you are seeing, the hint image says server is listening on port 3002, right? There is no hello world, right? But the code I shared with you says hello world. So make sure you have hello world please. Please make sure you have a hello world in the beginning for your test case to get executed. Okay? Apologies for that. I shared the code ahead. I was hoping you would do without looking at it, but then, you know, as always, we are in a rush. So this is what it should say. Once you say this, you will see you will get 100. Meaning, the test cases will pass. Okay, 40 of you got stars, green stars. So two things, make sure you are running on the proper port. Port should be 3002. Make sure, I think Mujtaba, your port is still 3001. Please change it and resubmit. Port 3002 and hello world, don't forget. All those who got it, make sure your friends also get it. Sri Rama Manish, 3200. Server is listening on port. Looks good to me. Please check. Resubmit. I think for some of them, the submission is taking a little longer. That's okay. Give it some time, please. You'll get it on. First, check the same URL in a different tab, everybody. Check it in the next tab in your own computer with the IP address. Make sure it is working, then submit it. Okay. Now we're almost up. We just have like 2 to 3 minutes of time. I'd like to do a quick recap. 63 got green stars. I'm surprised as to why rest of them are not submitting. Guys, if you got it working, help your friends as well. It's very simple. Okay. Let's do a quick recap. What did we learn in today's session? What is the main heading for today's session? Is it arrays? Asynchronous programming. Thank you. Sorry? Something's not working? Give me 1 minute. Let me do a quick recap and I'll come to you. So asynchronous programming we learned. We started looking at Node.js. There's more to look at it. We'll start again in the next session. In asynchronous programming, we saw how we used to use callbacks. Then we moved on to promises. Then we moved on to async await. Callback is where you call one function inside another function's call, method call please. It's not in the definition calling, but then in the method itself, whenever you have we have in map, filter and reduce, we have the function there, right? So either you define it there or you define it elsewhere and call that here, right? So callback. What is the problem with callback? When there are a whole lot of things that have to happen in a sequential order, right? It goes very, how do I put it? It goes like a callback pyramid. It becomes very convoluted kind, right? And any error that needs to be tracked becomes very difficult to be tracked. So callbacks are not at all a good way of working, right? Then that's why they came up with, like I said just now, then. The then keyword, promises, right? Promises is a whole big area, but one of the important things is in promises is it makes it very, very simple, right? If you are done with this, then do this, then do this. But then the error handling is still a little bit tricky. So even now, right, when you go to AWS and all those websites and work on it, you will see that some of them are still using promises. .then is still there. So if it's one call or two calls, it's okay. But if you have sequence of calls again, 7, 8 things to be done in an order, promises are still a little bit, they're not as convoluted, but they're still a little bit tricky mainly to troubleshoot any errors that happen, right? Because there is only one catch. You can have catches in the middle also, right? but then it becomes a little tough, which one, where and all, right? Then we moved on to async and await. Very simple. You make sure that whatever function has this code, you put an async in front of it, and wherever you are actually making the call, guys, the fetch call, right? Wherever you are making the call, you put an await. So there it is going to wait for that particular call to complete, and then only it will go to the next line, right? This is usually used in fetch calls, fetch or access, you will see later. So this is all asynchronous programming. Then I said that this is all very nice thing about JavaScript, where it runs very fast and get things done. So people started wanting to use JavaScript for other things, not just for client-side validation, not just for creating stuff. They wanted to create standalone applications. They wanted to create network applications. So people started creating frameworks. People started creating frameworks and modules. We look at them in the next class. What frameworks? There's one framework called Electron framework. Many frameworks that have been created, right? You must have already come across libraries like React.js, Express.js. So JavaScript became really big. But for all these things to work, they needed the engine that is in the browser to come out of the browser. And that is where Node.js came into picture. They wrapped the JS V8 engine with a few more libraries and said, here you go, install this and you can create your own applications. So that's how Node.js came into existence. Then it just grew so much. And most importantly, these are all open source things, guys. You don't have to pay for it. In the next class, I'll show you other servers that we used to use in not so olden days. Then you will know the importance of how Node.js is very simple and easy to work with. So now that we had Node.js, JavaScript and JavaScript framework outside the browser, we just saw how to create a server, right? So that was the server.js. In that we imported an HTTP module. On that HTTP, we called a method create server. To that create server, I gave a port, right? And then a callback. So at that port, whatever I ask in that, it will perform. Whatever action I have mentioned, whatever method I have there, that method, whatever it's supposed to return, it will return. So that's what I just said, hello world, and server is running it so and so port. Done? And how do you execute that server.js file? You go to the folder where it is and say node space server.js, right? Or you give the path to it if you are in a different folder. Everybody clear? So I'll see you again, or we'll meet here in this auditorium again after next week. Next week you will have ML or deep learning, and after that we'll have FSD again. And meanwhile, I'll keep sharing all the important links. Please practice and get good at it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, please check the study material has the relevant PDF of the device till now what is covered. Please let us know if you are not able to see. Second, I hope you are ready with the model, what the assignment which I gave to create a model whether we will pass in yes or not, right? Keep it ready. So most probably we will be uploading in Hugging Face, and the follow-up class where once we finish Node.js, we're going to have an API and a UI for that, so that you are ready with all those things. So please be alert, and this is an assignment also. This is a part of an assignment which is being graded at the end. So I'm giving you heads up for that, so please be ready. Okay? Thank you very much. You can leave for your previous class.